So Peterson's book came out today, and I meant to make this earlier, but now the book is out. And so you'll just have to accept that I really did make this without reading the book. I say that because I'm going to try to prophesy about the book, about what it's going to do, about what Peterson hopes it's going to do, what he has very carefully executed the plan to do what he hopes this book will do, if I have any sense of what's going on. So either I will be right, and that'll be interesting, or I'll be wrong. And in that case, I hope it'll be interesting in a different way, because I can fail. I can forgive a failed prophecy, but not a boring one. So here we go. Jordan Peterson's book, We Who Wrestle with God, right? So there's your first thing. We who wrestle with God is the translation of the word Israel, the name given to Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, when Jacob saw God and had his name changed, just like Abram was changed to Abraham. And so Israel, we who wrestle with God, and Peterson has put years into communicating this point to culture. Because if I talk to a person, I can get an idea across in a minute if they're attentive and intelligent. But if I want to get an idea into the culture, then I need to talk over and over and over again to a variety of channels. And Peterson has spent years developing something like relationships with groups, along with relationships with people. It's the reason he's so much more than another public intellectual. He doesn't just get up and say what he thinks. He is savvy to how cultures evolve, and he is playing on a level that we mostly don't have a vocabulary to talk about. But he went from his 15 minutes of fame to more fame, and he went from his more fame to developing relationships, and he went from his relationships to developing something like audiences. But the understanding is the dialogical relationship, back and forth, back and forth. He doesn't know what he's going to do 10 steps down the road, and he doesn't have to, as long as the real communication is there. He can move with it when it moves, and sometimes he can move it and it'll move for him. It's the same thing Trump does, same thing Bruce Lee did. The narrative layer of reality, that's Peterson's genius. And so he has put a good bit of effort into this book, We Who Wrestle with God. In my opinion, he intends this book to change the way everybody thinks about religion forever. It'll be like COVID. We called it COVID-19, but it was 2020 when any of us were paying attention to it. This book is out in 2024, but I believe it'll be 2025, the year when AI comes to you, and the year when we look at God very differently. And those two may end up a little bit more related to each other than you might think. So Peterson, here's what he did, man. Crazy. He's been on a book tour hyping this thing for 6 months. That's so weird. That's bold. I was so happy to see Alex O'Connor, who did better than probably anybody else could have done in making Peterson sound reasonable, to Richard Dawkins. And man, to look at that dialectically as him mediating between those two, and Peterson himself already mediating between others, we get a few more layers in there, we might be able to communicate from side to side. Because we have done a poor job of talking with each other, East and West, atheist and religious, and so on and so forth. And when Peterson says, oh, it was the mission of Piaget to reconcile science and religion, he says that, so that he doesn't have to say that that is his mission himself. Well, he writes the book. He doesn't release it on the book tour like normal. Instead, he starts hyping it on the book tour without it being released. And even for the 6 months, appearing on Joe Rogan, biggest platforms in the world tour, all of it, he still doesn't actually tell you what's in the book. At least that's been my impression of it. I said that yesterday on Pastor Paul Vanderklay's podcast recently, and he said he thought Peterson had more or less already said his point. Well, the pattern I've seen in Peterson is that he first gives you a contagious question. And then and only later does he give you the answer. Because he was a psychologist for way too long to make the elementary mistake to see the problem and just tell them how to fix it. Because he knows nobody will listen and nobody will appreciate it. And so what does he do? He has spent years frustrating people to get enough traction to talk to the human civilization and to get a point across, which is, I don't know how to answer if I believe in God or not, because there are different ways of thinking about God. A lot of them are hard to talk about. And in particular, Peterson may be said to be saying, I have a new one to add to the bundle. I think bundle is the right word, by the way, because you got Pajot, his friend's symbolic analysis. You got John Vervaeke, not even a Christian or as much of a Christian as even Peterson plays at, but plays seriously. John Vervaeke's psychotechnology is another ontology through which to try to understand religion and through which to understand Christ. Because Christ, as the self-taught genius Chris Langan says, whatever Christ, the actual person, was or even is, Christ has come to be the symbol of the perfect man or person, the fulfillment of the highest potential, and a potential not just within the realms we can think of, but within all realms. And so we try to say what we mean when we say Jesus is the perfect man, but it doesn't suffice. We've left out too much of him and his spirit. And we know we have because we're not living in his kingdom, because the world isn't harmonious and peaceful and loving. So it's not working. We need a better distillation of that spirit. And so we come up with new ontologies, whole new realms in which you could compete on being the best or the worst, and in which we assume Christ is already the best. Come up with anything, he's already the best at that. So John Vervaeke adds the psychotechnologies, Pajot adds the symbolic analysis, or refreshes it perhaps. Jordan Peterson has his something like pragmatic analysis. We add those together, we assume that Christ is not only the best at all the other ones, he's already been said to be the best at, but he's also the best at these new ones and the other new ones coming. And we start to get a clearer vision of Christ. And Peterson appreciates, in my opinion, that it doesn't really matter that much if we go from an incorrect understanding of God, religion, reality, Christ, to like a little bit of a better one. And we get so obsessed about the error in between these 2 points. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Here's an argument, here's a debate. What if you're wrong? What if it's here or not here? And meanwhile, the actual thing is like here or like infinitely off. And it's like the point isn't to find every flaw and get rid of it. The point isn't to get the clearest possible, truest possible answer you can right now. Because it wouldn't matter if you got it, because it would still be wrong. It would still be insufficient. And so the only thing that matters is how fast you're moving in the right direction. So when people are like, why are you so frustrating to talk to about God and other things? He's like, yeah, stop trying to answer all of these questions. The best answer is no substitute for the right answer. And we have lost sight of that. Science and our culture have a little bit given us this meme that the best answer is the right answer. Well, it's not. It's the closest thing to the right answer we've got so far, but in 100 years, we'll have an even better answer, and we'll look back on our answer today and say, yeah, it was wrong. It was leaving things out. It needed to be improved upon. And whatever was missing in it, you want to know where it was? Not where they thought it was, because they didn't find it. So it's surprising and it's shocking and it seems wrong, and then it turns out to be right. And the dialectic advances, the human conversation progresses, and we find out what we're talking about and who's talking. So, in my opinion, Peterson isn't trying to answer any particular question about God, and his frustration is actually a gift because if he was one more of a billions of people saying, "Yep, we know the answer about God, here it is," and then went on living in this world where apparently you have the knowledge of God and that's not good enough. No. Instead, he frustrates them. He frustrates them. He points out all the good points being made on both sides. And he makes it very clear. He doesn't have to say it, but it's very clear that, you don't have all the answers. You want to come back at me with your, I'll tell you exactly what it is. Here's my 3-step, whatever. You want to just feel how inadequate that feels in the context of all the deeper things that he's brought into this. And all the people who think they have an answer have managed to answer the question by replacing the huge, impossible question with some neat, tidy, little diluted substitute that they can't answer. Well, you need to wake back up and say, we clearly do not know enough about God because, according to every single religion, they're all trying to make a better world. You ask them what they would do if they could. They would all tell you, here's the world, how we would do it if we were in charge and everybody would finally let us. And you know what they would say? They would say, it would be wonderful. Everybody has a wonderful vision for all of us. And zero of them can accomplish it. And they all blame the obstacles, but it's just like, look, God could get this done and you can't. So somewhere there's something missing. So let's look for it. And we know we're not going to find it, but let's get closer and closer and let's speed up getting closer and closer. And so Peterson's book, he hypes it for 6 months. He tantalizes. He still doesn't tell you what's in it. 6 months, today's finally the day. He releases the book. It's right in time for Thanksgiving and Black Friday coming up. So that'll give him a nice boost. Hopefully, it'll give him bestseller status, get him in some headlines. Even if it doesn't go as well as we might hope, you get the Christmas second chance. So Christmas comes along and saves the day. And, it's got things to do with God, Thanksgiving and Christmas, both connected, but especially Christmas. People think about buying books for each other and vaguely religious books. And he's already had bestsellers before, and he's already very popular, and he has spent years developing new relationships with all the world religions and with various populations and types of people, middle, lower, upper class. And he will give them this book, and he's very controversial, and so that will help. His enemies will come help the meme spread as they've helped others of his memes spread unwittingly. As, for example, when he repopularized the term British liberal, a classic British liberal, so he could call himself one, get away with sympathizing with the right without saying he was on the right. Not that he's necessarily just on the right either, but he gave a rather simple definition. And so all of his enemies will to this day criticize, oh, what a sophomoric, practically uneducated professor of Harvard we have here. What a foolish, witless sort of mistake to make. Such an oversimplified meaning of British liberal. And it's only through their lips that most people ever hear about what a classic British liberal is. It is only because of Jordan Peterson that they are even paying any attention to the term. Most of them never would have heard of it either without him. And they are only spreading that meme more. And likewise with this book, his enemies will only spread it. And sure, some people will dismiss it because they know it comes from him. But if it works the way he wants it to work, the ideas will leach into the culture, seep into the culture, saturate it to some degree. They will become part of the conversation. You'll talk to people about God, and they'll start to say new talking points. It's not all, it's true, or we need God, or it helps me. It'll be something new. And you can dismiss it at first if you're not a Peterson fan or an anti Peterson fan. I mean, they're still fans, aren't they? They are a bit fanatic. They're just antis. Fans and anti-fans. But as the years go by, I don't really expect people's animosity toward Peterson to slow it down much. But if it did, even then, as the months and years went by, the ideas would eventually be part of the conversation. Too much for you to ignore them forever just because they originally came from this guy, if you even notice that. So I really don't expect the anti-Peterson animosity to get in the way. He's written it, he's given it the best possible on-ramp, he's hyped it like mad, he's savvy. He isn't Pinocchio, he isn't the real boy, he isn't the father. He might be the one who opens the book, or he might be the director, or he might be the one responsible for you watching that particular movie in the theater. I think it'll make a splash. I think it'll sell well. Probably bestseller again, but we'll see. But well enough to get the idea into culture, and then it's only a matter of time. Might be years, but at least in the cutting edge cultural circles, I expect it'll be within the zeitgeist within a year. So it'll be a participant in the paradigm shift that Vervaeke and I and others see coming. I think the AI God religion overlap is about to become a lot bigger of a thing to people, and Peterson might be right in the middle of that. So, very savvy move, very powerful player. Very excited to see what the book says and what it does in this world, because you look at a book like um, the Taoist book by Lao Tzu, and people say it's practically impossible to understand. But I would say if you want to understand a book like that and a book like Peterson's We Who Wrestle with God, you don't look at the book to understand it, you look at the reader. Or at least you look at the reader in Lao Tzu's case. In Peterson's case, you might look at the culture. The book is an intended mimetic mind. So here it comes. So we'll find out what happens. I'm very excited. I think it'll be fun at the very least, and maybe good, and maybe seriously good in an important way that's been missing. Might not happen, but but well, I don't know. We do what we can. I think something like that needs to happen in the cultural conversation, whether this book makes it happen or not. Wouldn't surprise me if Peterson tried again if the book doesn't get it done, and if others wouldn't try similar things. So the book is very interesting in the particular way this thing is playing itself out. But on some deeper level, it seems almost like the track is just there. It's inevitable to some degree. And the only question is, in what completely free and unique way do we explore, experience, enact, and create that? I think I approve of Peterson's attempt here. And if it works, cool. And if it doesn't, maybe I approve of the next attempt from him or someone else. And maybe I hope to contribute wherever I can to the conversations I participate in to furthering that conversation. That's the thing, is I don't know what the book says. I don't know if I agree with the answer, but I think I agree with accelerating the conversation. And I think that's what I appreciate so much about Peterson, is that I think people are generally criticizing him for giving answers of inferior quality, which is to misunderstand and to miss that the quality of his answers is not measured by how well they answer the question, but by how much they accelerate the cultural conversation toward something wholesome and good. And at that we fail, and at that we do our best. So that's it. Let's see what happens.